Hey, my name is Husto, and this is about to be my first video for my sports channel. Years back, I actually made a video about my Philadelphia Eagles in about 2020, and I was talking about what I think they needed in a draft and all that, but I did not keep up with it. So this is my first video back doing sports. Now, this video is going to be about certain things that I find interesting about what could happen in the offseason, about certain things that I've read recently. So today is January 14th. It's right before the playoff games. This has nothing to do about the playoffs. This is about teams that I find interesting heading into the offseason regardless of the outcome. But two of them are in the playoffs anyway. So if I can start, I'm going to go ahead and start about my Eagles. With my Eagles, we have a lot of free agents going into the next year. We have 4 defensive tackles. We have Sue, we have Linval Joseph, we have Cox, and we have Javon Hargrave, all hitting the free agent market. That is every defensive tackle we have except for Jordan Davis, Milton Williams, and very few others. Then we also have James Bradbury hitting the market. We have TJ Edwards, Kaiser White. We have CJ going out. It's going to be a busy offseason for Howie. When it comes to that, I actually have watched Howie, not watched him personally, but, as a fan, I've seen him year after year after year just doing magic. And I like what I see from him. So he has given me a new light on what I think can happen. I think that we keep Javon Hargrave. There's no way that we give up a guy who just had 11 sacks last year. I think his first contract with us was like a 3-year... Was it 3-year $30 million or was it 3-year $45? I think 3-year $45 is Hassan Reddick. Sorry if I don't know fully, but I got tired of sitting around waiting, taking notes and trying to get this video ready. Instead, I just want to jump right into it. So, I believe that we can keep Javon Hargrave. I think that we can restructure a contract or two, like a Lane Johnson or a Darius Slay. Those are easy names because they have higher cap hits. And I don't think we get James Bradbury. I think through the draft we'll get a cornerback. So that's one thing. I think this year is really, I don't want to say it's boom or bust, but it's really looking like it's boom or bust because TJ Edwards performed at an extremely high level last year. He was one of the best, if not the best, linebacker rated in coverage, and it's hard to replace certain things like that. Kaiser White had a great start to the year. He dropped off just a little bit, but he still did very well. And James Bradbury, second team All-Pro. It's not, I don't know how you replace that, but either it's going to be Zach McPherson, who's on the roster already, or we're going to go for a cornerback with that New Orleans pick that we have that is now 10th. Another thing that I think about is what are we going to do with Miles Sanders? Like, there's so much that can happen, but for some reason, I have a sneaky feeling that we will worry so much about defense that we will try to replace Miles Sanders in the draft. I'm not sure what's going to happen with that, but I do find it interesting the many options that we have. So I think that we're going to re-sign CJ. I think that we're going to re-sign Marcus Epps. Either that or maybe we could draft like a Brian Branch out of Alabama, but it's not a lot of safeties that's that high. And then if we take a cornerback first because cornerback is going to be more pressing and then the better cornerback prospects are going to go early, then I don't know that we can get a Brian Branch at 30, 32, whatever the pick may be. Depends on where we lose in the playoffs. So, with that being said, I personally think that we keep our safeties. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that we could fill in a spot here and there. Marcus Epps played very well last year, so I don't see why not. CJ got hurt, but he led the league in interceptions. Well, he tied for the league in interceptions regardless. So it would be good to see what happens with that, but he won't have a James Bradbury on one side. So we'll just see. At least we still have Avonte Maddox. We still have Darius Slay, so we don't lose our whole secondary, but a lot of our secondary and our defensive tackles and linebackers, a lot of our defense is hitting the free agency market. We're going to see how that goes. But knowing Howie, I know that he'll probably restructure some deals. We'll get some people in. The cap hits for some of the people that we signed will be lower in the beginning, but higher when we have more cap space later on. I don't know the numbers right now, but when I figure out the numbers, I will make another video and more extensive video for my Philadelphia Eagles. But now I want to talk about 2 teams who are not in the playoffs, who I think will do well. If, you know what, I think they'll be interesting. Let me just say that. The first team I want to talk about is a lot of speculation. I'm excited for the third team that I want to talk about, so I'm going to leave them last. But The second team I want to talk about the Colts, because I saw that they are interviewing Eric Bieniemy. With Eric Bieniemy gone there, you don't have a quarterback yet. So, in my opinion, that signals to me that Eric Bieniemy may be paired up with the rookie quarterback. So, does that mean they stick at number 4? Because the Colts are the number 4 pick. I personally believe that they will be the ones to trade up to number 1. I think they will give up some type of king's ransom, because if you think about it, the O-line had a bad year, but prior to that, they had all pros on that offensive line. You have Quentin Nelson, who was all pro. Like, that offensive line was so good up until this year. You still have Jonathan Taylor, so you don't have to give up Jonathan Taylor to move up to number 1. You can give up future first-round picks and this year's first-round pick. So you give up the 4th overall pick and a pick next year. You move up. You select whatever quarterback that you think is going to be fit with Eric Bieniemy's system. So you get a Bryce Young, you can get a C.J. Stroud, or even if they want to wait for and get a Will Levis, who knows. But another thing to think about is Chicago is number 1. They have Justin Fields already. You have Arizona at number 3, and they have Kyler Murray already. Unless they are sick of Kyler Murray, I don't see them taking a quarterback. So if they sit at number 4, it's potentially that you just get the number 2 quarterback, the number 2 prospect at the quarterback position, which could be C.J. Stroud, or if somebody thinks highly of C.J. Stroud, you get a Bryce Young. If you pair a C.J. Stroud or a Bryce Young with Michael Pittman, you have Alec Pierce, you still have Mo Alley Cox, you have Jonathan Taylor, and you have an offensive line that is not far removed from being a top 5 offensive line. All they have to do is play at a top 10 or a top 15 offensive line rate, and I will figure out if they have did that last year, but they were pretty awful last year. You have a defense that probably has a lot of free agents, but you have a lot of young players in there. Like, I know they have a Nick Cross. They still had a Rodney McLeod. I'm pretty sure he signed for 2 years, so that should be his second year. But there's a lot of options for a rookie quarterback to go on with Eric Bieniemy. He doesn't even have to know the system. He doesn't have to play hero right away. He goes into a decent situation where he doesn't have to be the man off the rip. He could literally wait 2 years. You still will have the Russian champion from 2 years ago. Had he not been injured and had the offensive line not played so inconsistent, he probably could have been top 10 again this year if he was not top 10. I don't know his rushing totals. Like I said, I didn't do full research. This is just off of what I know prior, and I think that's the good way to go. Eric Bieniemy always gets shit for not being a good interviewer, but a lot of coaches weren't good interviewers. A lot of coaches didn't have good press conferences when they got hired, and they still went on to have good careers. Doug Peterson didn't have a great interview. I mean, a great press conference when he first got hired as the Eagles head coach. He went 7-9 as a rookie head coach, even though they went 3-1 with Carson Wentz, but Carson Wentz was not used to throwing a ball like 400 times. I think he threw the ball 339 times. If I'm wrong, I'll put it in a video. But the next year, they start the year off, 10-1, 11-1, and they won the Super Bowl. Although it was with Nick Foles as a quarterback. I know that all too well because I even went to the Super Bowl parade. I heard that Jason Kelce speech. It was awesome. But I really think that Eric Bieniemy could do really good things if he gets the right opportunity. And depending on the direction of where the franchise wants to go, I think that the Colts, with Eric Bieniemy and a rookie quarterback, can do amazing things. And I think that I can't wait to see what happens. But it is the Colts, who have been renting a quarterback ever since Andrew Luck, which you had Jacoby Brissett the first year. Then you had Phillip Rivers. Phillip Rivers, I think, got him to the playoffs. Or maybe he just missed the playoffs. I'm not sure. Then you had Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz actually didn't play that bad. 27 touchdowns to 7 interceptions. I've never seen a quarterback have that type of ratio and get so much flack for it. Like, I understand he didn't beat the Jacksonville Jaguars in that last game. Okay, why didn't Jonathan Taylor do anything? He was the Russian champion that year. He finished with 1,800 yards, I believe. Where was Jonathan Taylor in that game? What happened with the offensive line? Why was no one making catches? It can't all fall back on one person, but he also had the fumbles. He didn't make the plays that they think he should have made, and that's what happened with him. And then you had Matt Ryan, and we see how that looked. This year they had Matt Ryan, Sam Ehlinger, and Nick Foles. Like, that's ridiculous. But give Eric Bieniemy a good coaching staff. It would be interesting to see who his coaching staff would be. And it'll probably be like some quarterback coach becoming a offensive coordinator, and then it'll probably be maybe some defensive coordinator who wasn't getting. I don't know. I don't know who will be defensive coordinator. I don't know who his staff would be, but it's a very interesting situation to think about. My last team is the team that I had just mentioned with the Colts. I think the Chicago Bears is the most interesting team going into this next offseason. The Chicago Bears have a projected, I think this is per NBC Sports, the Chicago Bears have projected $118 million in cap space. That is $50 million projected over the second best team, or the second team with the most cap space, which is the Atlanta Falcons, which is a projected $68 million. So you have $118 million in cap space. You have your own picks for the next couple of years, except for this year. I believe they traded their second round pick for Chase Claypool, so they don't have their own second round pick, but they have someone else's second round pick. I'm not sure. I can't remember. So I personally believe Chicago should trade back. I already said that I think they should trade back with the Colts, so I'm going to stick with that. So you trade back from the Colts, and the reason why the Colts trade up is because there may be a chance that someone else is willing to trade up for a prospect that they really like, and they're not willing to settle for the number 2 prospect this time. They're not willing to settle for a quarterback that they didn't want or didn't think can be their long term. They have to be tired of the 1-year deals. The 1-year rentals that they've been doing. So I think the Colts get spooked, trade up, and they give up that 4th pick, and they give up a future 1st round pick, and maybe even a future 2nd round pick, or maybe this year's 2nd round pick, so that the Chicago Bears can have a 2nd round pick again. Who knows? I don't care. But in a situation that Chicago trades down, and I believe that with the draft order, if Chicago trades down, it will be the Colts, then it will be the Texans. Those two, Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, regardless. Unless somebody becomes the Zach Wilson of this draft and goes up in front of CJ Stroud or whoever goes number 2. I think that the Cardinals may be the ones who take Will Anderson, because you need help. They need help badly. But if they don't take Will Anderson, I could see that Will Anderson, or I can't remember the guy, I don't want to say Jalen Carter, but whoever the D lineman from Georgia is goes to Chicago. Regardless, Chicago has hit on their draft picks. Last year, I was very impressed when they got Jaquan Brisker and they drafted Kyler Gordon. Jaquan Brisker was a dude from Penn State. He's a guy I had in my notes where I'm like, the Eagles need a safety, and we didn't draft a safety, and I was sitting here like, what's going on? Luckily, we traded for CJ, and luckily, Marcus Epps worked out. So, Jaquan Brisker had a great year with the Bears. Kyler Gordon had a great year. You have $118 million in cap space. I think you can realistically go out and get a James Bradbury. I believe they had a dude named Whitehead as their cornerback last year, and he was actually rated as one of their best football players per PFF, Pro Football Focus. But he is a free agent going into next year. I don't know what his free agent status is, but if you want to throw money at people, you can go for a James Bradbury. You still got Eddie Jackson to keep with Jaquan Brisker, so that works out right there. If you want to get better at, imagine getting that D lineman, whether it's the dude from Georgia or whether it's Will Anderson. Then you also get a James Bradbury who locks up that side of the field, and maybe you could get a linebacker in the draft, or maybe you can just go ahead and pay a linebacker. You have money galore. But the one thing I've been saying almost for a month now, I kept telling my friends, this is why I needed to make this video sooner. I kept saying, look at the 3rd year progress that we've seen from the last few quarterbacks. We had a Josh Allen. His team got him Stephon Diggs, and he became an MVP candidate immediately. His accuracy went up. His yards per throw went up. Every metric that you could think of went up when Josh Allen got Stephon Diggs. Then Kyler Murray went out and got DeAndre Hopkins, or I should say Arizona went and got DeAndre Hopkins for Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray actually had the best accuracy out of the quarterbacks that I'm going to mention, Josh Allen and the next quarterback. But early on in his career, he had a better accuracy, but it even got better once he had a DeAndre Hopkins. If I could find a clip for when DeAndre Hopkins came back this year after his suspension, he was running a route, came back, and the ball was already thrown. That just shows the trust that a DeAndre Hopkins can instill in a young quarterback to make those plays. When without DeAndre Hopkins, Kyler Murray held onto the ball too long. He would try to make plays with his legs too much. And then after he got DeAndre Hopkins back, he was able to make throws on time that he wanted. His time per throw had went down not significantly. I don't remember what the metric was, so I'm not going to put that out there as if I do. But he was able to make throws into better windows. He was able to make throws quicker, and he didn't have to hold on to the ball as much now that he had DeAndre Hopkins back. The 3rd quarterback I'm going to speak of is My guy Jalen Hurts. My guy Jalen Hurts got A.J. Brown. We already had Smitty. He had a really good rookie year, although it got overshadowed by obviously a Jamar Chase and a Jalen Waddle, his own teammate from college. But A.J. Brown took that man, and he went from a 59% completion rate or a 60% completion rate all the way to a 66.5, 67 essentially. These third-year quarterbacks getting a stud wide receiver has helped them so much. Now to Justin Fields. Justin Fields is heading into his third year. He has shown that he could use his legs, and he's shown that he could be a passer when needed, but there's not much you can do when your offensive line is mainly rated highly because of their run blocking. They were the number one rushing team this year by a long shot. What does that sound like? That sounds like Jalen Hurts and the running team that we had last year. If you can get him a wide receiver, I don't know who it's going to be, but I had an idea. I was telling people, why don't they see if DeAndre Hopkins' agent is willing to see if they can seek a trade. And then I got a news update. They said that Arizona is looking to shop DeAndre Hopkins in the offseason. Then I got another update from Google, I believe, saying that DeAndre Hopkins wants out of Arizona. Who better to take that cap hit? Because if I'm correct, he took on a 2-year, $54 million extension. And this is like years ago, before the Devontae Adams deal and before the Tyreek Hill deal. So it's not even looking that bad in terms of cap space. And you got $118 million in cap space with Chicago. Why wouldn't he want to go to Chicago? Now, in the report, it did say that he does not want to go to a losing team. He's tired of that. He had to deal with that in Houston before they got Deshaun Watson. And then even then, that relationship was short-lived because Bill O'Brien thought that David Johnson was good enough to replace the talent of a DeAndre Hopkins. Come on. Trying not to cuss on this channel. But regardless, if you can give Justin Fields a DeAndre Hopkins, we've seen what happens when you gave Kyler Murray that person. Now, does DeAndre Hopkins want to play with a third-year quarterback such as Justin Fields? He wants to go to a win-now situation, but who can he really go to get to a win-now situation? There are teams, but I'll talk about that in another video because I do want to expand on some of my thoughts. This is just me putting my thoughts out there without any of the intensive research that I already had. If I'm being honest with you, I have this little book right here. I have so many notes on videos in this. I'm willing to show them a little bit. But I don't know, man. I think the Chicago Bears are such an intriguing team because you have the cap space, and even if you can't get the third-year stud, even if you can't get the stud wide receiver to pair with your third-year quarterback, you can always do the route that Jacksonville went. Jacksonville had a lot of cap space, and I presume they couldn't trade for a wide receiver that was a stud. So instead, they paid a Christian Kirk, who wasn't viewed as a number one wide receiver, but they paid him as a number one wide receiver. And look at him. Christian Kirk went out there and balled out. Zay Jones went out there and balled out. They had Marvin Jones, who came from Detroit a few years ago, and he became a reliable target, but they knew that he wouldn't be the number one. You got a Travis Etienne back, and the rest is history. Look at them. They're in the playoffs at 9-8, but still, I don't know. I think the Chicago Bears are a very intriguing team, and if I can, I will make another video. I will make another video going in detail about the three teams that I mentioned: my Eagles, about their free agents, the Colts about the possibility of their future, and the Chicago Bears about what they could do. So I appreciate you listening to me. I do have a gaming channel if you guys are into gaming, but this should be on my sports channel. This will be the first upload, and I appreciate anybody that came here. If you can, please drop a comment on what you think about the video. And tell me what you would think other teams are intriguing, because there's a lot of teams I find intriguing. I find the Jets intriguing because I think they're a quarterback away, and I think that they may trade for a quarterback. They may sign a veteran quarterback, maybe a Derek Carr, maybe a Jimmy G, maybe even trying to fleece Lamar Jackson from the Ravens, who haven't given him the contract, and if they try to lowball him, he may seek out a trade. But I think that if he seeks out a trade, it'll be like a Deebo Samuel type thing. It's like, I'm going to seek out a trade, but in all reality, I just want them to give me the contract I'm looking for. But enough on that. I hope that you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys you comment, share, subscribe. I hope you do all of that. I want to have some engaging conversations with you guys about these topics, and I hope to see you guys for my next video. Y'all take care.